Tehran, Iran. Saturday, February 28, 2026. 2:20 in the morning, local time. The city is asleep. In a compound in northeast Tehran, behind walls that have never been breached, the most powerful man in the Islamic Republic is alive. 86 years old, 37 years in power. The man who crushed four major uprisings. The man who built a nuclear program the world could not stop. The man who turned Iran into the most significant military power in the Middle East that no American president had dared confront directly. His name is Ali Khamenei, Supreme Leader of Iran. By sunrise, he will be dead. In the next 12 hours, the United States and Israel will fire nearly 900 strikes across Iran. They will kill dozens of senior Iranian officials. They will strike nuclear sites, missile depots, air defense systems, and command infrastructure. They will shut the world's most important oil choke point, and they will trigger a regional war that economists, generals, and diplomats are still trying to contain. Here is the question nobody has answered cleanly. Was this justice? Or was this the most dangerous act of state power since Hiroshima? That is what we are here to find out. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back. Not to February 2026. Not even to 2025. We need to go back to 2018. In May of that year, President Donald Trump made a decision that set the clock ticking. He withdrew the United States from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA. That was the 2015 nuclear deal that had frozen Iran's uranium enrichment program in exchange for sanctions relief. 6 countries had negotiated it. The IAEA had been monitoring it. It was, by most technical assessments, working. Trump walked away from it anyway. He called it the worst deal in history. What followed was not diplomacy. It was a slow-motion crisis. Iran responded by accelerating enrichment. By November 2024, the CIA director confirmed that Iran could produce enough weapons-grade uranium for one nuclear bomb in, quote, a week or a little more. The country had gone from a year's breakout time under the deal to 7 days outside it. By February 2025, the IAEA reported Iran's stockpile of 60% enriched uranium had jumped from 182 kilograms to 275 kilograms in a single quarter. 90% is weapons grade. 60% is one technical step away. Meanwhile, something else was happening across the region. In 2023 and 2024, Iran's network of proxy forces, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, were being systematically dismantled by Israeli military action. Hezbollah was decapitated in September 2024. Its long-standing leader Hassan Nasrallah was killed. The Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad, Iran's closest Arab ally, collapsed in December 2024. The so-called axis of resistance, the web of militias and armed groups that Iran had built over 4 decades to project power without direct war, was fracturing at every seam. Iran was weakening, and the window was closing. In June 2025, Israel launched what became known as the 12-Day War, a direct campaign against Iranian military sites and nuclear facilities. For the first time, the two countries fought directly. Israel overwhelmed Iran's air defenses with apparent ease. The United States struck Iran's hardened nuclear sites using GBU-57 bunker buster bombs. A ceasefire was declared on June 24, 2025, but the war was not over. It had only paused. In the months that followed, Iran's currency collapsed. Sanctions reimposed after the 12-day war drained the economy. By December 2025, protests had broken out across every major Iranian city. The regime responded with force, brutal, systematic force. According to Iranian Health Ministry figures, at least 30,000 people were killed in the crackdown. 30,000. The United States was watching, and it was building. Between January and February 2026, Washington assembled its largest military presence in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Aircraft carriers, B-2 stealth bombers, electronic warfare platforms. The Pentagon had been planning this for months. According to reporting from Reuters, the operation's timing had been set several weeks before the strikes began. Then came February 28, 2026. At 2:16 in the morning Eastern Time, the US-Israel campaign began. In 12 hours, nearly 900 individual strikes were launched. Targets included Iranian ballistic missile depots, air defense radar networks, naval bases, command and control facilities, and, most critically, leadership locations. The CIA had spent weeks mapping the movements of Iran's senior leadership using what sources described as strategic intelligence about their precise whereabouts. The Israeli Air Force, supported by the United States Air Force and Navy, executed the decapitation strikes. Ali Khamenei was killed in his Tehran compound. By the early hours of March 1, 2026, the Iranian government confirmed it. The man who had ruled the Islamic Republic for 37 years, longer than most of his citizens had been alive, was dead. He was not alone. Dozens of Iranian officials were killed in the same operation. The Assembly of Experts, the body constitutionally responsible for choosing a new supreme leader, was itself struck by an Israeli airstrike on March 3 as it convened in Qom to begin the succession process. This was not an accident. This was a decapitation strategy, a systematic, pre-planned attempt to not just strike Iran's military but to destroy its capacity to govern. The scale of it was staggering, but the cost was immediate. At 10:23 in the morning on February 28th, at the Shajare Tayyibeh Elementary School in the city of Minab in southern Iran, a missile struck. The school was adjacent to a naval base. Classes were in session. The roof collapsed. According to Wikipedia's documented account, 156 people were killed, including 120 schoolchildren. The United Nations Education Agency, UNESCO, condemned the strike as a grave violation of international humanitarian law. Neither the United States nor Israel claimed responsibility for the Minab strike. Iran accused both. Early reporting from Reuters and the New York Times indicated that a preliminary U.S. military inquiry pointed to American responsibility. The Pentagon did not confirm or deny. That silence was its own answer. Iran's response was immediate. Within hours of the first strikes, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps launched retaliatory missile and drone barrages targeting U.S. embassies, military installations, and oil infrastructure across the Middle East. American bases in Bahrain were struck. Smoke rose over Minab. The UAE came under attack for the first time. And then Iran did something that no one had fully wargamed. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a 21-mile-wide choke point between Iran and Oman. Through it passes approximately 20% of the world's seaborne oil and 20% of global liquefied natural gas. Every day it is closed, energy markets convulse. Fuel prices rise. Shipping insurers pull out. Tanker crews go home. The IRGC declared that no vessel was permitted to transit the strait. Iranian fast boats began boarding and attacking merchant ships. Sea mines were laid. At least 7 merchant vessels were damaged or abandoned. 12 seafarers were killed or went missing. The world's most important oil choke point was shut. The United States launched a counter-campaign on March 19th to force the strait back open, aerial strikes against Iranian naval assets and drone positions along the waterway. It then imposed a full naval blockade of Iranian ports on April 13, 2026. According to U.S. estimates, the blockade was costing Iran $500 million a day. Meanwhile, Iran appointed a new supreme leader. Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the man America had just killed, was named as successor. His first public message, delivered not in person but read aloud by a state television anchor while a still photograph was displayed on screen, vowed that retaliation would not be limited to the killing of his father. Pakistan began mediating ceasefire talks. A conditional ceasefire was declared on April 8th. But the strait remained closed. Peace talks stalled. Brinkmanship continued. The UAE was struck again. Trump declared the war very complete, pretty much on March 9th. It was not complete. Not even close. Here is what most coverage has buried. The strikes on February 28, 2026 began while peace negotiations were still active. Let that sink in. U.S. and Iranian negotiators had been meeting through Oman as a mediator since April 2025. By February 2026, Oman's foreign minister reported that Iran had agreed to never develop nuclear weapons and that, according to his account, substantial progress had been made. He said, confident that a deal was within reach. Trump said he was not thrilled with the talks. Days later, the bombs fell. This is not speculation. These are documented, verified, public statements from named officials recorded in the UK Parliament's House of Commons library briefings and reporting by NPR, Reuters, and Britannica. The negotiations existed. The agreement on no nuclear weapons was reportedly offered. And then the war started anyway. So the question the mainstream coverage keeps skating around is this: what was the operation actually for? The stated objective was to destroy Iran's nuclear program and induce regime change. But according to a preliminary report from the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, which the Trump administration characterized as a political leak, Iran had moved much of its enriched uranium stockpile before the strikes, and the underground nuclear facilities, according to that same report, were not collapsed. The nuclear threat, the stated reason for the war, may not have been neutralized. What was achieved? Iran's conventional military was severely degraded. Its leadership was killed. Its currency had already collapsed. Its proxy network was already broken. And this is the part that rarely makes the front page. The Strait of Hormuz crisis was disrupting the energy supply of China, Japan, South Korea, and India, not primarily the United States. America is now largely energy self-sufficient. The countries most economically hurt by a closed Hormuz are not American allies. They are American competitors. Three-layer power structure. Layer 1. The visible actors. The United States military. The Israeli Air Force. Donald Trump. Benjamin Netanyahu. Layer 2, the systemic force, a nuclear non-proliferation order that was fracturing. A decades-long proxy war that had reached a moment of Iranian weakness not seen since the 1980s. A U.S. administration that calculated diplomacy would not achieve what military force could, while a window existed. Layer 3, the hidden beneficiary. In a region where Iran's closure of Hormuz is devastating Asian energy markets, where regime change in Tehran would open the country's vast oil reserves, and where the weakening of Iran's nuclear program serves both Israeli and Gulf Arab security interests, the question of who profits from this conflict continuing is not a simple one. What is documented is this: Venezuela's opposition leader had already promised to open that country's oil reserves to the U.S. in November 2025. The Monroe Doctrine was being actively applied in the Western Hemisphere. A pattern of resource-adjacent military action is verifiable. Whether it is the primary driver is, as of today, unproven. What is not unproven is this: the war started while a deal was reportedly on the table. The Council on Foreign Relations 2026 Annual Conflict Risk Survey assessed a Russia-NATO armed clash as a 50-50 likelihood. The same survey added Venezuela and a Taiwan Strait crisis as high-impact contingencies. The U.S. military is now stretched across an active Iranian conflict, a Venezuelan aftermath, a continuing Ukraine war, and a Pacific deterrence challenge. History tells us what happens when a superpower overextends. The Roman Empire, the British Empire at Suez, America itself in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. The pattern is consistent. Overwhelming initial force, unclear political objectives, entrenched local resistance, and a bill that arrives long after the cheering stops. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, whose father was killed by American-backed munitions, has publicly committed to continued resistance. Iran has threatened military action if the U.S. blockade of its ports does not end. Peace talks, mediated by Pakistan, are deadlocked over two central issues: the future of Iran's nuclear program and control of the Strait of Hormuz. Both sides want the other to move first. Neither is moving. For American and British viewers, the stakes are direct. Global fuel prices are rising because of Hormuz. Supply chains across Asia are disrupted, which means goods that travel from Asian manufacturing hubs to American and British consumers cost more. And the United States military, already managing the largest drone warfare transformation in its history, is simultaneously managing a live regional war, a new cold standoff with China, and a NATO alliance being tested at its eastern flank. The question is not whether this conflict ends. It will end. The question is what it costs, and whether the stated objectives are actually achieved. So what does this story actually mean? The killing of Ali Khamenei is the single most consequential act of state-sanctioned assassination since Soleimani in January 2020. And before that, arguably since the targeted killing of Osama bin Laden in 2011. But Khamenei was not a terror operative hiding in a compound in Abbottabad. He was the head of state of a country of 90 million people, a sovereign nation. The United States, without a formal declaration of war, without explicit congressional authorization, chose to decapitate an entire government while nuclear negotiations were reportedly active. There are those who argue this was necessary, that Iran's nuclear timeline had reached the point of no return, that diplomacy had been tried and had failed, that the moment of Iranian weakness, with its proxies dismantled, its economy collapsed, its people in the streets, was the last window to act. That history will judge this as the moment America finally removed a destabilizing force from the Middle East. And there are those who argue this was illegal, that it violated international law, that it killed children in a school in Minab, that it set a precedent that any sufficiently powerful nation can now kill any foreign leader it deems a threat, while negotiations are happening, without a vote of Congress and without UN approval. Both of those arguments are being made today, not by partisans, by lawyers, generals, intelligence professionals, and historians. The real winners so far: Israel, whose most enduring strategic threat has been militarily degraded; Gulf Arab states who want Iran contained; American defense contractors whose drone, missile, and electronic warfare systems are being bought in the hundreds of billions. The real losers: the people of Iran, who lost 30,000 in protests before the war even started, and then lost children in a school in Minab. The global trading system, which depends on Hormuz staying open, and the rules-based international order, whatever remained of it. This was not a mistake. This was a choice, made deliberately, planned for months, executed with precision. Whether it was the right choice, that is the question that will define the next decade of global politics. So we want to hear from you. Was the killing of Iran's Supreme Leader a necessary act of self-defense, or the most dangerous precedent in modern military history? Let us know in the comments what you think. And in the meantime, thank you very much for watching.